Picture this. It's 25,000 years ago, and you're standing in what would one day become Germany. But right now, it looks more like Antarctica. Massive glaciers stretch as far as the eye can see. Temperatures regularly drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, and the landscape is a frozen wasteland, where even the rivers are solid ice for months at a time. This is the last glacial maximum, the peak of the most recent ice age, and it represents the harshest climate conditions our species has ever faced. Yet somehow, against all odds, humans not only survived this frozen apocalypse, they thrived in it. They raised families, created art, developed technologies, and built communities that would lay the foundation for everything that came after. The question isn't just how they survived, it's how they managed to do so much more than just survive in a world that seems designed to kill them. The answer reveals one of the most remarkable survival stories in human history, a tale of ingenuity, adaptation, and sheer determination that would make modern survival experts weep with admiration. These weren't primitive cave dwellers cowering in the dark. They were sophisticated engineers, master hunters, brilliant strategists, and innovative problem solvers who turned a frozen wasteland into a livable world. The last glacial maximum wasn't just cold, it was a complete transformation of the planet. Ice sheets up to 2 miles thick covered vast portions of North America, Europe, and Asia. Sea levels dropped by 400 feet, exposing land bridges that connected continents. The Sahara Desert was even drier than today, and much of what we now consider habitable land was buried under millions of tons of ice. But our ancestors didn't just endure this world, they mapped it, understood it, and found ways to thrive in every corner. Archaeological evidence from sites across the globe reveals survival strategies so sophisticated that they challenge everything we thought we knew about prehistoric human capabilities. The first secret to Ice Age survival was understanding that the frozen world wasn't uniform. It was a complex landscape of microclimates, resource pockets, and seasonal opportunities that required intimate knowledge to exploit. Ice Age humans became masters of reading this landscape in ways that would shame modern meteorologists. They understood that south-facing slopes received more solar radiation and stayed warmer throughout winter months. Archaeological sites consistently show preferential use of these locations for winter camps. At Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic, one of the most famous Ice Age sites, the settlement was positioned precisely to take advantage of maximum sun exposure while being protected from prevailing winter winds. They knew that certain valleys created thermal inversions where warm air was trapped, creating relatively comfortable microclimates even during the harshest weather. The famous Solutré site in France, where archaeologists found evidence of massive mammoth hunting operations, was positioned in exactly such a thermal pocket, a location that provided natural protection from temperature extremes. River valleys were particularly prized because they offered multiple advantages: access to water even when surface sources froze, natural windbreaks from surrounding hills, and concentrated wildlife that also sought shelter in these protected areas. The Moravian sites in the Czech Republic, which represent some of the most sophisticated Ice Age settlements ever discovered, were all strategically positioned in river valleys that provided maximum environmental advantages. But location was just the beginning. Ice Age humans developed hunting strategies that were so effective, they managed to take down the largest land animals that ever lived. And they did it with nothing but stone-tipped spears, coordinated teamwork, and tactical brilliance that would impress modern military strategists. The mammoth hunters of the European steppes developed techniques that allowed small groups of humans to kill animals weighing up to 6 tons. This wasn't random luck or desperate struggle. It was systematic, scientific hunting that required detailed understanding of animal behavior, sophisticated planning, and flawless execution. At sites like Předmostí in the Czech Republic, archaeologists found evidence of coordinated mammoth hunts that involved driving entire herds into natural traps, valleys, or steep-sided areas where the massive animals couldn't escape. The positioning of spear points and bone fragments reveals that hunters understood mammoth anatomy well enough to target specific kill zones that would bring down these giants as quickly and safely as possible. But mammoth hunting was just one component of a complex survival strategy. These humans developed what modern ecologists would recognize as sustainable multi-resource management systems that exploited every available food source without depleting any of them. Archaeological evidence from sites across Ice Age Europe reveals systematic seasonal rounds where groups moved in carefully planned circuits that maximized resource availability throughout the year. Spring meant following reindeer herds as they migrated north, taking advantage of predictable migration routes that could be exploited year after year. Summer involved intensive plant gathering and fishing in areas where seasonal abundance made it possible to accumulate winter stores. Fall was the critical preparation season, when success or failure in the coming winter was determined. This was when the most dangerous hunts took place: the mammoth drives, the massive bison kills, the systematic harvesting of animals whose stored fat and preserved meat would sustain communities through months of scarcity. The Solutré site in France provides stunning evidence of these fall hunting operations. Archaeological excavations revealed bone deposits from thousands of horses, evidence of systematic hunting drives that took place over centuries. These weren't random killings, but carefully managed harvests that provided precisely the resources needed for winter survival, while ensuring that horse populations remained stable for future years. Winter survival required completely different strategy. This was when Ice Age humans retreated to their most sophisticated settlements, complex communities that represented some of the earliest examples of organized human society. These weren't temporary camps, but permanent installations designed to support large groups through months of extreme conditions. The Kostenki sites in Russia reveal winter settlements that house dozens of people in elaborate complexes of interconnected shelters. These communities included specialized work areas for tool-making, food preparation, hide processing, and even areas that appear to have been dedicated to artistic and ceremonial activities. This wasn't just survival, it was civilization in miniature, complete with division of labor, social organization, and cultural practices. Food storage was absolutely critical for winter survival, and Ice Age humans developed preservation techniques that remained essentially unchanged until the development of modern refrigeration. The permafrost environment of Ice Age winters was actually an advantage. It provided natural refrigeration that could keep meat fresh for months when properly managed. Archaeological evidence reveals sophisticated food storage systems that took advantage of natural freezing conditions. Meat was cut into specific sizes and shapes that maximized preservation, while allowing for controlled thawing when needed. Fat was rendered and stored in specially prepared containers made from animal stomachs or bladders, providing concentrated energy sources that were essential for maintaining body heat in extreme conditions. But preservation wasn't just about keeping food from spoiling. It was about maintaining nutritional value through processing techniques that maximize the caloric and vitamin content of stored foods. Evidence from sites like Przedmosti shows that mammoth bone marrow was systematically extracted and stored, providing crucial fats and vitamins that prevented malnutrition during long winter months. The social organization required for Ice Age survival was remarkably sophisticated. Archaeological evidence suggests that successful Ice Age communities required cooperation on a scale that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric social development. These weren't small family groups struggling alone. They were organized societies with complex leadership structures, specialized roles, and systematic resource sharing. Analysis of Ice Age sites reveals evidence of craft specialization that could only exist in stable, organized communities. Some individuals specialized in tool-making, creating stone implements with a level of skill and consistency that required years of dedicated practice. Others specialized in hide preparation, food processing, or hunting coordination. The famous Venus figurines found at sites across Ice Age Europe suggest the existence of shared cultural symbols and possibly religious or ceremonial systems that unified communities across vast distances. These weren't isolated groups, but members of cultural networks that spanned continents. Burial practices from Ice Age sites reveal sophisticated concepts of social status and community membership. The elaborate Sungir burials in Russia, where individuals were buried with thousands of carved ivory beads and sophisticated tools, indicate societies with enough surplus resources to support extensive artistic and ceremonial activity. Technology development during the Ice Age represents one of the most rapid periods of innovation in human history. Faced with survival challenges that required immediate solutions, Ice Age humans invented tools and techniques that remained unchanged for thousands of years afterward. The spear thrower, or atlatl, was developed during this period and represents a quantum leap in hunting effectiveness. This simple device could increase spear velocity by 50% or more, turning a hand-thrown spear into a weapon capable of penetrating mammoth hide. Archaeological evidence from sites across Europe shows systematic development and refinement of spear thrower technology over thousands of years. Needles made from bone, with eyes small enough to thread sinew through, allowed for the creation of fitted clothing that provided unprecedented protection against cold. The Paleolithic needles found at sites like Kostenki are so finely made that they rival modern sewing implements in precision and functionality. But perhaps the most important technological development was the systematic management of fire on a scale that transformed the environment itself. Ice Age humans didn't just use fire for warmth and cooking. They used it as a landscape management tool that increased the carrying capacity of their environment. Evidence from sites across Europe shows systematic burning practices that maintained grasslands suitable for large herbivores, preventing forest succession that would have reduced game populations. This represents early human ecosystem management, intentional environmental modification that increased resource availability. The housing technologies developed during the Ice Age were architectural marvels that provided effective shelter, using only materials available in the frozen landscape. The mammoth bone houses found at sites like Mezrich in Ukraine used the bones of hundreds of mammoths to create structures that could house extended families through entire winters. These weren't crude shelters, but sophisticated buildings with carefully planned foundations, drainage systems, and internal organization that maximized living space while minimizing heat loss. The largest mammoth bone houses covered areas of over 600 square feet and showed evidence of multiple hearths positioned to provide optimal heat distribution. But even more impressive were the semi-subterranean houses found at Siberian sites, like Malta and Buret. These structures were partially dug into the ground to take advantage of Earth's thermal mass, then covered with elaborate frameworks of bone and hide that created thermally efficient living spaces in some of the coldest inhabited places on Earth. Clothing technology reached levels of sophistication during the Ice Age that weren't surpassed until the development of modern synthetic materials. The outfit worn by Ötzi the Iceman, though from a later period, gives us insight into the complexity of Ice Age clothing systems. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age clothing involved multiple layers specifically chosen for their thermal properties. Base layers of soft fur worn against the skin, insulating layers of dense fur or woven materials, and outer shells of treated leather that provided wind and water protection. This layering system is identical to modern cold weather clothing principles. But Ice Age humans went beyond simple layering. Evidence from sites like Sungheir suggests the use of specialized cold weather accessories, mittens, hats, and even primitive snow goggles made from carved bone or antler with narrow slits that reduce snow glare while maintaining vision. The level of detail in Ice Age clothing construction is staggering. Microscopic analysis of preserved leather fragments reveals stitching techniques that created waterproof seams, decorative elements that served functional purposes, and repair methods that extended garment life indefinitely. Transportation technology was crucial for Ice Age survival, as success often depended on the ability to move quickly across frozen landscapes in pursuit of migrating herds or to reach seasonal resource areas. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age humans developed some of the earliest forms of overland transportation. Ski-like devices made from split logs have been found at sites across northern Europe, providing evidence that humans were using snow travel aids at least 8,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier. These weren't crude sleds, but sophisticated transportation tools that allowed rapid movement across snow-covered terrain. But perhaps more important was the development of systematic trail networks that connected resource areas across vast distances. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age humans maintained pathway systems that spanned hundreds of miles, complete with shelter sites, resource caches, and navigation markers. The famous ice highways of the frozen rivers provided natural transportation corridors that Ice Age humans used to move between distant communities. Evidence from sites along major European rivers shows systematic use of these frozen waterways for long-distance travel and trade. Resource management during the Ice Age required forward planning on a scale that challenges our assumptions about prehistoric human cognitive ability. Archaeological evidence reveals systematic stockpiling of materials that wouldn't be needed for months or even years. Toolstone was quarried and transported hundreds of miles from source locations to areas where it would be needed for toolmaking. The famous flint mines of Krzemianki in Poland show evidence of systematic extraction and distribution that supplied toolmakers across vast areas of Ice Age Europe. Organic materials were systematically collected and processed during optimal seasons, then stored for use when they would be unavailable. Evidence from mammoth bone sites shows systematic collection of tusks and bones that were stockpiled for construction projects during winter months when hunting was less productive. But perhaps most impressive was the management of food resources, on a scale that suggests sophisticated understanding of ecological carrying capacity. Archaeological evidence from mammoth hunting sites shows patterns of exploitation that maximized yield while ensuring population sustainability over centuries. The artistic achievements of Ice Age humans represent some of the earliest evidence of complex symbolic thought and cultural transmission. The cave paintings of Lascaux, Chauvet, and dozens of other sites weren't just decoration. They were information storage systems that preserved crucial knowledge about animal behavior, seasonal patterns, and hunting strategies. But Ice Age art went far beyond cave paintings. The carved figurines, decorated tools, and elaborate burial goods found at sites across Europe represent sophisticated artistic traditions that required significant time and resources to create. This art could only exist in societies with enough surplus resources to support non-survival activities. The famous Lion Man sculpture from Hohenstein-Stadel, carved from mammoth ivory over 40,000 years ago, represents cognitive abilities that equal anything produced by modern humans. This level of artistic achievement could only emerge in societies that had mastered their environment well enough to have time and resources for creative expression. Musical instruments from Ice Age sites, including flutes made from bird bones and mammoth ivory, suggest rich cultural lives that helped maintain group cohesion during the long, dark winter months. Music and art weren't luxuries. They were social technologies that helped communities survive psychological challenges of Ice Age living. Trade networks during the Ice Age spanned incredible distances, connecting communities across continents. In exchange systems that distributed critical resources and maintained genetic diversity between isolated populations. Archaeological evidence reveals materials that traveled thousands of miles from their sources. Amber from the Baltic Sea has been found at Ice Age sites in southern Europe, while seashells from Mediterranean coastlines appear in Central European settlements. This represents organized trade networks that required sophisticated logistics and maintained relationships across vast distances. But trade wasn't just about materials, it was about information exchange that allowed communities to share innovations and survival strategies. The rapid spread of new tool technologies across Ice Age Europe suggests communication networks that could disseminate crucial information across continents within decades. The genetic evidence from Ice Age populations reveals that despite geographic isolation imposed by glacial conditions, human populations maintained enough contact to prevent genetic bottlenecks that could have doomed isolated communities. This suggests systematic population exchange that required organized social networks. Health and medicine during the Ice Age were far more sophisticated than popular imagination suggests. Skeletal evidence from Ice Age sites shows that communities cared for disabled and elderly members, providing evidence of medical knowledge and social support systems. The famous Shanidar burials from Iraq, though from an earlier period, suggest that care for the injured and disabled was an established human practice by the Ice Age. Archaeological evidence from later Ice Age sites shows individuals who survived major injuries and lived for years afterward, indicating active medical care. Dental evidence from Ice Age populations suggests knowledge of medicinal plants and possibly even primitive dental care. Wear patterns on teeth show evidence of tool use for food processing that reduce dental stress, while chemical analysis reveals consumption of plants with known medicinal properties. But perhaps most impressive is evidence that Ice Age humans understood the connection between nutrition and health. The sophisticated food preservation and preparation techniques found at Ice Age sites ensured not just caloric adequacy, but nutritional balance that prevented deficiency diseases even during long winters. Seasonal behavioral adaptations were crucial for Ice Age survival, requiring completely different strategies for different times of year. Spring was the time of maximum mobility, when communities followed migrating herds and moved to areas with seasonal resource abundance. Archaeological evidence suggests that spring activities focused on restocking depleted winter supplies while taking advantage of renewed animal activity. This was when the most complex hunting operations took place, requiring coordination between multiple communities to successfully exploit large-scale migration events. Summer was the season of intensive gathering and processing, when communities worked frantically to accumulate the resources that would carry them through another winter. Evidence from sites across Europe shows summer camps dedicated entirely to resource processing, areas where hundreds of people worked together to process massive quantities of plant and animal materials. Fall represented the crucial preparation period when success or failure in the coming winter was determined. This was when the most dangerous hunting operations took place. The mammoth drives, bison jumps, and other high-risk, high-reward activities that could provide enough resources for winter survival. Winter survival required retreating to the most protected locations and relying on accumulated stores while maintaining the social cohesion necessary for community survival. This was when Ice Age humans developed their most sophisticated technologies for heat retention, food storage, and indoor activities that maintained mental health during months of confinement. The psychological adaptations required for Ice Age survival were as important as physical ones. Surviving months of darkness, extreme cold, and social confinement required mental strategies that prevented depression and maintained group cohesion. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age communities developed elaborate ritual and ceremonial practices that provided psychological support during the most challenging periods. The art, music, and storytelling traditions evident at Ice Age sites weren't just entertainment, they were mental health technologies that helped communities survive psychological challenges. The elaborate burial practices and artistic traditions found at Ice Age sites suggest belief systems that provided meaning and hope during the darkest periods. Whether these constituted formal religion or simply shared cultural values, they represent sophisticated psychological adaptations to extreme stress. Group decision-making processes evident at Ice Age sites suggest democratic or consensus-based leadership that prevented the social conflicts that could destroy communities during stressful periods. The evidence for resource sharing and mutual support indicates social technologies that prioritized group survival over individual advantage. The legacy of Ice Age survival strategies can be seen in traditional cultures around the world that continue to use techniques developed during this period. Inuit hunting methods, Mongolian herding practices, and Scandinavian winter survival techniques all trace their origins to innovations developed during the last glacial maximum. Modern survival experts studying Ice Age archaeological sites consistently express amazement at the sophistication of prehistoric survival strategies. Many techniques developed 25,000 years ago remain essentially unchanged in contemporary survival training because they represent optimal solutions to universal survival challenges. The social organization models developed during the Ice Age, cooperative, leadership, resource sharing, and mutual support, continue to influence human societies today. The archaeological evidence suggests that many fundamental human social behaviors evolved as adaptations to Ice Age survival challenges. Even modern technology often rediscovers principles that Ice Age humans mastered millennia ago. Contemporary cold weather gear, food preservation techniques, and environmental management strategies frequently parallel innovations first developed during the last glacial maximum. The Ice Age wasn't just a period that humans survived, it was the crucible that forged many of the characteristics that define our species. The cooperation, innovation, planning, and problem-solving abilities that allowed our ancestors to thrive in impossible conditions remain fundamental human traits today. These remarkable ancestors didn't just endure the last glacial maximum, they used it as an opportunity to develop technologies, social systems, and cultural practices that laid the foundation for everything that followed. They transformed a frozen wasteland into a homeland, proving that human ingenuity and cooperation could overcome any challenge nature could present. The next time you face a seemingly impossible challenge, remember these Ice Age pioneers who looked at a world of ice and death and decided to not just survive, but to build thriving communities that would outlast the glaciers themselves. They remind us that humans aren't defined by the circumstances we face, but by how we choose to respond to them. If you're fascinated by the incredible ingenuity of our Ice Age ancestors and want to learn more about how they accomplished these amazing feats of survival, make sure to subscribe to this channel. We're diving deep into the real science behind prehistoric human survival, debunking myths, and revealing the true story of how our ancestors conquered the most challenging period in human history. Hit that like button if this changed how you think about human capabilities. And let me know in the comments what other Ice Age survival mysteries you'd like us to explore. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll continue uncovering the amazing secrets of human adaptation and survival.